I still can't believe this happened in aisle 7 of a grocery store of all places. Like, who just ends up talking to themselves out loud in public? Me, apparently. And then, as if the universe wanted to mess with my already weird day, some random guy just joined the conversation like it was the most normal thing in the world. So picture this. I'm standing there, stuck in the cereal aisle at around 7 p.m. after a long day of work that drained all my energy. I'm half-heartedly scanning the shelves, trying to decide between the generic Frosted Flakes knockoff or the more expensive organic granola. And then it hits me. Why am I even arguing with myself about cereal? But I do it anyway, out loud. Okay, man, granola's healthier, but do you really want to start your morning feeling like you're eating bird food? Frosted Flakes it is. Yeah, I was that guy. Talking to my reflection in the cereal box, or maybe just to the empty air. Then I hear this soft chuckle from behind me, and I freeze for a second. I glance back, half expecting the manager or some concerned shopper to give me the side eye, but instead, there's this guy, probably late 20s, casual but stylish, with this easy smile that somehow doesn't feel judgmental. He's holding a box of those fancy organic granola bars, looking at me like he just caught the most ridiculous, endearing thing. And then he says, "You know, I'm right there with you on the cereal debate." It's a legit struggle. His voice is calm and friendly, and suddenly, the awkwardness of talking to myself turns into this weird little connection. Like this random cereal aisle just became the setting for a conversation I didn't know I wanted. I blinked a couple of times, trying to figure out if I should run or just roll with it. Spoiler, I rolled with it. Glad I'm not the only weirdo, I say, and somehow that breaks the ice. We start talking about cereal brands, favorite childhood breakfasts, and before I know it, he's telling me about his work as a graphic designer and how he tries to keep his mornings simple but satisfying. And just like that, I went from awkwardly muttering to myself in aisle 7 to having this unexpectedly good conversation with a stranger who, honestly, feels a little like potential. The kind of potential that makes a mundane grocery run suddenly worth remembering. But just as I was about to ask for his number, the moment got interrupted by the store's announcement that the aisles were closing for restocking. And somehow, that felt like the universe's way of saying, "Not just yet, buddy." So here I am, standing in aisle 7, with a box of Frosted Flakes in one hand and a conversation that's still buzzing in my head. And honestly, I'm wondering if I'll ever get the chance to finish that chat. The announcement echoed through the store again. "Attention shoppers, aisle 7 is now closed for restocking. Please proceed to other aisles." I glanced over at the guy, the one who had just made my day a little less awkward and a lot more interesting, and he gave me this apologetic shrug, like he hated the interruption just as much as I did. "Guess the cereal gods don't want us to settle this debate tonight." He joked, and I laughed, which felt nice because honestly, I wasn't in the best mood before this conversation. He started to move toward the next aisle, but then hesitated and looked back at me. "Hey, I'm Liam, by the way." I blinked, like I hadn't even introduced myself in the first place. "Ryan," I said, tucking my hand into my pocket, suddenly feeling a bit self-conscious. "Why does meeting someone new always make me clam up?" "Ryan," he repeated with a smile. "Nice to meet you. So maybe we can finish the cereal debate over coffee sometime? I know a place that does killer granola parfaits." For a moment, I wanted to say yes right away, because why not? But the weird nervousness kicked in, like when you're about to jump in a cold pool and your body just won't cooperate. "Yeah, that sounds really nice." I managed, hoping my voice didn't betray how awkward I felt inside. Liam grinned and pulled out his phone. "Here, give me your number." I took out my phone too, and we swapped digits quickly, the kind of exchange that felt way more exciting than it should have in a grocery store parking lot. Then we parted ways, him with his box of granola bars under his arm, me with the Frosted Flakes clutched like a trophy. I watched him walk to his car, already feeling this weird flutter in my stomach that I hadn't felt in a long time. Maybe since college? I don't know. The rest of the drive home, I kept replaying the conversation in my head. I mean, how often do you just stumble into a moment like that? I wasn't even looking for anything, just trying to get dinner sorted, and suddenly, bam, someone steps into your weird little world and makes it better. The next morning, I woke up kind of excited and nervous at the same time, which was a nice change from my usual dread of early mornings. I texted Liam a quick, "Morning cereal debate challenger" message, half expecting no response. But within 5 minutes, my phone buzzed back. "Morning, Ryan. Ready for round two?" We ended up meeting at this little coffee shop downtown, the one he mentioned, cozy and tucked away with exposed brick walls and a playlist that made me want to stay all day. Liam was already there when I arrived, sitting by the window with a cup of black coffee and a big smile that made me feel like I'd just walked into something good. We talked about everything: work, bad dating experiences, favorite movies, and somehow even why cereal was such a big deal to me. He listened like he actually cared, and I found myself opening up more than I usually do on first dates. Or whatever this was. I mean, it didn't feel like a date, exactly, but it also wasn't just coffee with a stranger. When we finally wrapped up, Liam suggested a walk in the nearby park since the weather was turning nice. And man, that walk turned into hours of laughing, trading stories, and sharing little moments that felt like they belonged somewhere else, away from the noise of everyday life. At one point, we found ourselves sitting on a bench, watching the sunset paint the sky pink and orange. Liam reached over and brushed a stray hair off my forehead, and my heart skipped a beat. I looked at him and saw this quiet nervousness mirrored in his eyes, like maybe he was feeling the same thing I was. "Ryan," he said softly, "I know this might sound crazy, but I'm really glad I joined your conversation in the cereal aisle." I smiled, feeling something I haven't felt in a long time: hope. "Me too, Liam, me too." Driving home that night, I realized I hadn't thought about cereal once, because sometimes it's not about the cereal. It's about the unexpected moments that catch you off guard and maybe, just maybe, change your life in the best way possible. The next few days were kind of a blur, but in a good way. Liam and I kept texting. Some days just quick check-ins about how our mornings were going. Other times, longer messages where we'd ramble about everything from the dumbest memes to our favorite songs. I wasn't used to talking to someone like this, especially not someone who seemed genuinely interested in what I had to say. It felt different, but in a good way. So when Liam suggested we grab dinner midweek, I didn't hesitate. We picked a small Italian place he recommended, the kind with dim lighting and paper napkins, and for the first time in a long time, I wasn't nervous about meeting up. It felt familiar already, like we had this weird, easy rhythm. That night, I realized something. Liam wasn't just a cool guy the first bumped into in a grocery store. He was someone I actually wanted to know better. Like, really better. Not just surface stuff, but the messy, complicated stuff that you don't usually share until you've known someone forever. We talked for hours about family, hopes, past heartbreaks that still stung a little. I told him about my failed attempt at online dating, how I felt like I was just swiping through people's highlight reels instead of real life. Liam shared his own stories, the ones that made him shy or laugh nervously. There was this honesty between us that made the restaurant feel like our own little world, separate from everything else. At some point, Liam reached across the table and took my hand. It was surprising, but not unwelcome. His hand was warm, steady, and I felt this sudden calm wash over me like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. I looked into his eyes, and for once, I didn't feel like I had to impress anyone or hide parts of myself. We didn't rush anything. No grand gestures or declarations. Just two guys who found each other in the weirdest way and somehow made sense of it all by simply being present. After dinner, we walked out into the cool night air, the streets lit by soft amber lampposts. I realized I didn't want the night to end, but neither of us said it aloud. Instead, we settled into this comfortable silence as we strolled down the sidewalk, the sounds of the city humming all around us. When we got to Liam's car, I hesitated. Part of me wanted to say goodnight and leave, but the other part, probably the bigger part, wanted to see where this was going. "Can I see you again?" I asked, voice a little rough. Not sure if that sounded lame or too eager. Liam smiled that same easy smile that had hooked me from the start. "I was hoping you'd ask." That was the moment I realized this wasn't just some random grocery store encounter. This was the start of something real. Over the next couple of weeks, we kept exploring that something. Weekends were filled with movie marathons, long hikes, and lazy afternoons, where we made terrible coffee and laughed about how awful it was. We cooked together, sometimes successfully, sometimes setting off the smoke alarm, but always ending up on the couch with takeout and good conversation. One night, a few weeks in, we were lying on Liam's couch watching a documentary about old jazz musicians, and I caught myself just watching him instead of the screen. There was something about the way his eyes lit up when he talked about the music he loved, or the way his smile softened when he caught me looking at him. I bit my lip and nudged him. "Can I tell you something kind of stupid?" Liam raised an eyebrow, grinning. "When you say kind of stupid, I'm bracing myself for something epic." I laughed, feeling the familiar warmth growing in my chest. It's just, I didn't think something like this could happen to me. Meeting someone like you, I mean. It's crazy how a random moment in a cereal aisle turned into this. He reached over and tucked a loose strand of hair behind my ear, his touch gentle. "Sometimes the best things come from the weirdest places," I nodded, heart pounding. "Yeah, I don't want to mess this up." "You won't," he said softly. "We'll figure it out together." And in that moment, with the soft glow of the TV and Liam's hand in mine, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. Real hope. But just when I thought things couldn't get better, life threw me a curveball. One that would make me question everything we'd built so far, and force me to confront what I really wanted. Not just from Liam, but from myself. It started with a text. From an old friend I hadn't spoken to in years, and it brought up memories I wasn't sure I was ready to face. I was half dozing on the couch one Sunday afternoon when my phone buzzed. I didn't recognize the number, and honestly, for a moment, I debated ignoring it. But something made me swipe to open. It was a message from Jason. Jason, the guy that first barely talked to in college, but who somehow had stayed on my social media radar all these years. We'd lost touch after graduation, mostly because of the way things ended between us. It wasn't a dramatic breakup, more like a messy silence that stretched longer than either of us wanted. The message was short. Just, "Hey, I've been thinking about you." I stared at the screen for way too long. My heart raced. Part of me wanted to delete it right then and there and pretend it never happened. But another part, the part I'd been trying to shove down and ignore for years, felt a strange pull. I didn't know what to say. "Hey, it's been a while," I typed, fingers trembling. Jason replied almost immediately. "Yeah, too long. Can we talk?" That simple question hit me harder than I expected. Talk about opening a door I'd left shut for a long time. I put my phone down and looked over at Liam, who was curled up beside me, reading a book. His peaceful face made me feel safe, but I also felt guilty. How could I possibly bring up this ghost from my past now, when things with Liam were just starting to feel real? I spent the rest of the afternoon wrestling with myself. Should I tell Liam? Should I meet Jason? Was this just a random ping from the past or something more? And what did I want? Because honestly, after all these years, I wasn't even sure anymore. That evening, I finally decided to be honest with Liam. We were making dinner together, a somewhat disastrous attempt at homemade pasta, when I blurted out, "Hey, there's something I need to tell you." He looked up from the chopping board, eyebrows raised but attentive. "Yeah?" I took a deep breath. I got a message from someone, from my past. Jason. We didn't exactly end things well back in college. Liam paused, then nodded slowly. "Do you want to talk about it?" I shrugged, feeling vulnerable in a way I hadn't with anyone in a while. "I don't know. I'm scared it might mess things up between us, but I also don't want to keep secrets." Liam reached out and squeezed my hand. "Whatever you decide, I'm here for you. No judgment." That simple reassurance made me want to cry. I realized then how much I cared about him, and how much I wanted to do this right. Over the next few days, I kept texting Jason, trying to figure out what he wanted. It turned out he'd been dealing with some rough stuff and wanted to make amends. He said he regretted how things ended and just wanted to clear the air, no expectations beyond that. I wasn't sure if I was ready, but I agreed to meet him at a quiet cafe downtown. Liam offered to come with me, but I said I needed to handle this on my own. When I saw Jason sitting at the corner table, I felt a knot in my stomach. He looked different. More worn, maybe, but still the same guy who had once been a big part of my life. We talked for hours. About all the things we never said. The misunderstandings, the hurt. It was painful, but also oddly freeing. I realized I'd been carrying that old weight longer than I needed to. By the end of the conversation, there was no dramatic reconciliation. Just a shared understanding and a sense of closure I didn't know I needed. When I texted Liam afterward, I wrote, "I'm glad I did it." His reply came quickly, "Me too. Proud of you." That night, when I saw Liam waiting for me at his place, the tension I'd been holding on to started to unravel. I told him everything about the meeting, the mixed feelings, and how I was trying to figure out the past so I could be fully present with him. Liam listened without interruption, then pulled me close. "Thank you for trusting me. That means more than you know." We stayed like that for a while, just holding each other, both aware that relationships aren't always simple or perfect. Sometimes, they're about showing up even when things get messy. In the weeks that followed, I noticed something changing inside me. I felt lighter, more honest, not just with Liam but with myself. I stopped overthinking every little thing and started embracing the imperfect, beautiful chaos of what we were building together. One afternoon, as we were walking through a farmer's market, Liam stopped and grabbed my hand. "I don't want to rush anything," he said, looking into my eyes, "but I'm really into where this is going. And I hope you are too." I smiled, squeezing his hand back. "More than you know." Maybe it was the way the sunlight hit his face, or the way the world felt quiet around us. But in that moment, I was sure of one thing. Sometimes, when you least expect it, you find someone who makes all the messy parts worth it. And this time, I wasn't talking to myself anymore. I had someone right beside me, ready to join the conversation. Life started settling into this comfortable rhythm with Liam. Texts that made me smile in the middle of work. Weekend plans that somehow always included trying new coffee spots or wandering through parks. And those quiet nights when we'd just hang out, doing nothing but feeling like everything was exactly where it was supposed to be. It was one of those days, a Saturday that felt like it was holding a secret, when I realized I was willing to take a leap I'd been avoiding for years. We were sitting on the floor in Liam's apartment, surrounded by scattered takeout containers and a half-played board game. He was in the middle of explaining why he thought I was cheating, but I was distracted by the way the afternoon light caught the strands of his hair, making them glow just a little. I must have been spacing out because suddenly he looked up at me with a smile that made my heart do something stupid. "You okay?" he asked, tilting his head. "Yeah," I said, trying to sound casual, but my voice probably came out shakier than I intended. "Just thinking." He nudged me gently with his elbow. "About what?" I hesitated, then took a deep breath. "About us. About how I don't want to just see where this goes anymore. I want to say it out loud." His eyebrows lifted, and suddenly I felt like I was on the edge of something. "Say what?" "I like you. Like, a lot. More than just casually or, we'll see. I want to be with you. The real deal." For a moment, Liam was quiet. Then a grin spread across his face, the kind that made his eyes sparkle. "I was hoping you'd say that." Relief and happiness washed over me like a wave. It felt like the first time I was really being seen and accepted without any pretense. I reached out and took his hand, holding on like it was the only thing anchoring me. That night, we stayed up late talking about everything, the good, the scary, the unknown. We made plans, but more importantly, we made promises, to be honest, to take things slow, and to keep laughing, no matter what. But real life doesn't pause for declarations of love. A few days later, I got a call from my sister. My mom wasn't doing well. It was sudden, and for a moment, everything outside that call blurred into insignificance. I told Liam immediately. His face fell, but he didn't hesitate. "I'll come with you. Whatever you need." Driving back to my hometown, I felt this strange mix of dread and comfort. Dread, because I didn't want to face the uncertainty waiting at home, and comfort because Liam was by my side, holding my hand on the console like we were the only two people in the world. Seeing my mom in the hospital was harder than I expected. She looked tired, fragile, but there was this fierce light in her eyes that reminded me of the woman who always believed in me, even when I doubted myself. Liam stayed with me through every appointment, every sleepless night in the waiting room. At one point, I caught him sitting quietly, sketching something in a notebook. When I asked about it, he smiled and said, "Just trying to keep my mind busy. You've been on it a lot." That simple gesture meant more than I could say. In a place full of stress and uncertainty, he was my calm. During one of the quieter moments, we stepped outside the hospital for some fresh air. The city noise felt distant, and for the first time in days, I allowed myself to breathe. Liam pulled me into a hug. "You're not alone in this, Ryan," he said softly. I nodded, resting my head against his chest. It was the kind of support I hadn't known I needed, and I was grateful for it. The days that followed were a whirlwind of doctors, updates, and moments of hope mixed with setbacks. Through it all, Liam was my rock. He cooked meals when I couldn't, kept me laughing when the weight felt unbearable, and never stopped reminding me that we were in this together. One afternoon, as we sat in the hospital garden watching the leaves turn gold, Liam reached out and took my hand again. "You've been so strong," he said, "but it's okay to lean on someone." I smiled, feeling a warmth that had nothing to do with the autumn sun. "I'm trying." He squeezed my hand gently. "And I'm here, always." That promise settled into me, a quiet anchor amid the chaos. A few weeks later, after a particularly good update from the doctors, Liam and I found ourselves back at the coffee shop where it all began, the one with the exposed brick and the soft playlist. We sat across from each other, hands intertwined on the table. "I don't know what the future holds," I said, "but I do know I want you in it." Liam smiled, eyes shining. "Same here." And just like that, the grocery store aisle where we started talking to ourselves became less a coincidence and more like fate's way of saying sometimes the best conversations happen when you least expect them. After that day at the coffee shop, something shifted between Liam and me. It wasn't like an earth-shattering moment or some grand gesture, but more of a quiet understanding that whatever came next, we were in it together. And honestly, that felt like more than enough. Life, though, had this way of reminding me that while love could be a safe harbor, it was also complicated, messy, and sometimes painfully real. A few days later, Liam invited me over to his place for dinner. Nothing fancy, just the two of us cooking something up from scratch instead of ordering takeout. I was looking forward to it, not just because I liked food, but because I liked spending time with him in those small, everyday ways that felt so normal yet so special. When I arrived, Liam was already in the kitchen, humming to himself as he chopped vegetables. The place smelled like garlic and basil, and I thought, yeah, this was going to be good. We settled into an easy rhythm, him juggling pots and pans, me washing the dishes and stealing bites here and there. We laughed over how I consistently managed to burn my fingertips or spill a bit of sauce on the floor. Liam teased me endlessly, but it was affectionate, the kind of teasing that comes from knowing someone well enough to poke fun without crossing any lines. After dinner, we moved to the couch with glasses of wine, the soft glow of the lamp making everything feel warm and intimate. I was about to say something when my phone buzzed on the coffee table. I glanced at the screen and felt that familiar knot in my stomach. It was a message from Jason again. This time, it wasn't casual. It was more urgent. "Hey, can we talk? I need to explain something." I stared at the message, feeling torn. I didn't want to bring this up with Liam. Not tonight, at least. But I also didn't want to ignore it. Before I could decide what to do, Liam noticed my hesitation. "Everything okay?" I hesitated, then nodded. "Yeah, just an old friend reaching out. Nothing serious." He studied me for a moment, as if trying to decide whether to push or let it go. Finally, he said, "You know you can tell me anything, right?" That simple sentence made me realize how much I wanted to be open with him, no matter how complicated things got. So I told him about Jason's message, about the history we shared, and about the mixed feelings it stirred up. Liam listened without judgment, his hand finding mine again, steady and reassuring. "Whatever happens, we'll face it together," he said. That night, I made the call to Jason. We met at a quiet park bench under the streetlights, the kind of place where you could talk without distractions. Jason looked different, more worn, maybe, but his eyes held a sincerity I hadn't seen before. He told me things I hadn't known, the struggles he'd been facing, the mistakes he'd made, and why he wanted closure. It was messy, painful even, but it felt honest, and honesty was something I valued more than anything. When I got back to Liam's apartment, I found him waiting up for me, a small smile on his face. I sat down beside him and took his hand. "It's complicated," I admitted, "but I'm glad I did it." He nodded, pulling me close. "Life's complicated, but so are we." The next few weeks tested us in ways I didn't expect. There were moments of doubt, awkward conversations, and times when I questioned whether I was doing the right thing. But through it all, Liam's steady presence was my anchor. One evening, after a long day, we found ourselves on the rooftop of his building, watching the city lights flicker like stars below us. Liam turned to me, his eyes reflecting the glow. "I know this isn't always easy," he said, "but I want to keep trying, with you." I smiled, feeling a warmth spread through me. Me too. And as the night wrapped around us, I realized that love wasn't about perfection or easy answers. It was about showing up, even when things got messy, and choosing each other again and again. Sometimes, life starts with a simple conversation, maybe even a silly one in a grocery aisle, and grows into something unexplainable and beautiful. And if I've learned anything, it's that those moments are worth holding on to. Weeks turned into months, and Liam and I kept navigating the ups and downs of life together. There were no grand declarations or dramatic moments, just a steady, honest connection that felt more real than anything I'd ever experienced. We learned to communicate better, to lean on each other when things got tough, and to celebrate the small victories like perfecting a pasta recipe or finding a new coffee shop to obsess over. One chilly Sunday morning, we found ourselves back in that same grocery store aisle where it all started. I swear, the cereal boxes looked different somehow, less ordinary, like they were holding memories instead of just breakfast options. Liam nudged me with a grin. "Ready to settle the cereal debate once and for all?" I laughed, shaking my head. "Honestly, I don't care what cereal we pick anymore. I care about who I'm with." He reached out and took my hand, the warmth of his palm grounding me in a way I hadn't realized I needed. We grabbed a couple of boxes, the granola bars he'd been obsessed with, and, grudgingly, a box of Frosted Flakes for me, and headed to the checkout, side by side. Later, as we sat in his apartment sharing a lazy breakfast, I thought about how far I'd come, from talking to myself in that aisle to having someone who actually listened and joined the conversation. Liam wasn't just a guy the first met by chance. He was a partner, a friend, and the person I wanted to face whatever came next with. Life was far from perfect, and we both knew that. But in the quiet moments, the ones without pressure or expectation, I found something that felt like home. I looked over at Liam, who was smiling as he sipped his coffee, and I realized that sometimes the best stories don't come from big, dramatic moments. They come from ordinary days made extraordinary by the people you share them with. And for the first time in a long time, I was exactly where I was supposed to be.